Hello and welcome back to another Tea Time with me, Meoni. And this is the video series then that I've started up to sort of talk to people as if they're actually live with me, because I can't actually live stream due to my low bandwidth, which hopefully will be fixed in the future at some point. I'll keep you up to date if I ever get to actually upgrade that, and I would love to be able to actually live stream, but until then this is sort of my way of just talking to you guys. So the first topic I want to talk about this week is the 6 years of Final Fantasy XIV. And in particular, the first topic is what your favourite moments are from the last 6 years, and what's the earliest moment that you actually remember. So I think the second part of that question really needs to come first. So the earliest memory I have of Final Fantasy XIV is actually playing the 1.0 version of the game as a fisherman, because when you started out the game you could choose your class, and you could actually start as a crafting or gathering class, which blew my mind at the time, and I thought, oh wow, a game where you get to actually specialise around this as opposed to just combat roles. So foolishly I chose Fisher, and I was a Lalafell at the time, I believe, in 1.0. And I started out, I was throwing rocks at sea creatures attacking the boat. I remember that much, the boat to Limsa Lominsa, which is sort of like the prelude to the storyline. And then once you go to Limsa Lominsa, you have to go and try and find your trainer. And I remember just looking at the maps and going, wow, who in the right mind would create a map as bad as this? And back in 1.0, the game looked completely different to how it does now. And that's not me completely being bad and nasty towards 1.0. It's definitely improved a lot since then. And in terms of my earliest memory with 2.0, it was actually on the open beta, when I saw the sort of things they had done to change the game and make it all the better for it. Everything from the map design to the UI, which was clumsy and horrible looking before. Everything you can possibly think of, including the combat, was completely redesigned and made much more fresh and modern, in line with stuff like World of Warcraft of the time, which obviously was and still remains one of the biggest competitors in the industry. But I think my most favourite moment out of all of these 6 years have been just interacting with the various people from every single ethnic and subcultural background you can even remotely imagine. There were people from America playing at the time on Ragnarok, because it wasn't specified if it was an American or a European realm. And basically in the open beta, it was just an absolute incredible time. I think my most favourite memory was in open beta actually, where there was just like hundreds of thousands of people in the starting zones, and we were all in terrible gear leveling. It was sort of like the WoW Classic sort of experience that you'll get now if you try that out, but essentially, you know, Final Fantasy related. And it was really difficult to find monsters, you know, basic monsters. They were just being camped and destroyed. Then there was that first storyline that sort of ramped up towards the first experience you get with Ifrit. Oh my goodness. I remember my first time fighting against Ifrit with a group of people I'd met on the beta, and we went in there and it was actually quite astonishing. I'd never seen combat like that before. Obviously I wasn't used to the AoEs on the ground and the timing on those. I thought that you could just wait until they faded then move from them, as opposed to the actual you will die if you don't move from them before they fade sort of thing. But it was a glorious time learning the game for the first time. I remember how incredible it was to step up from something like World of Warcraft. The basic tactics for bosses were exciting, even though they were simplistic. It was a whole different mechanic, and for the most part I still think that the combat in Final Fantasy XIV is much more in-depth and a lot more varied than games like World of Warcraft. I don't think there's another MMORPG on the market that does boss fights as well as 14. So that's definitely something that was one of my earliest, most favourite memories, of defeating that boss and feeling like I'd actually accomplished something, even though we were like level 20. So there was obviously the rest of the game to go, and probably, and you know, subsequently it proved to be a lot more difficult towards the end game at level 50. So yeah, 2.0 is all kinds of crazy. I plan to do a few videos on the 6-year anniversary. I know Square Enix themselves have already done their Tales from the Shadow Lore series, and of course the Message in the Bottle Rising event in-game, as well as the Message in the Bottle creative writing contest for North American listeners out there. You can go and take part in that, which is quite exciting. So yeah, there's all sorts of things, but I think I should probably, contribute towards this, and so I'll be making a few videos, and I might make a few machinimation as well, because there's some funny elements to, the early days that we need to address as well. So on to the second topic, let's just go over the podcast idea. I indeed decided to go ahead with it. A lot of people said that this in many ways is actually already like a podcast, which whilst I agree with that, a podcast to me isn't necessarily someone just talking on their own. It's not the same as actually having guests and people with you. I want to upgrade the microphone quality because at the moment I have to do a lot of post editing and a lot of audio editing to actually noise cancel and noise gate and get rid of pops and stuff like that. So I want to invest a lot of the money I get from AdSense, in fact all of it this month, and indeed some of the Patreon money, to actually put back into the microphone quality. And we're going to get a mixing desk as well and set it up properly so we can actually have guests, and then hopefully it won't sound like two people talking over radio mics in the cab of a big truck, which would be ideal, because at the moment with my current tests it doesn't sound all that good, and I'm finding it very difficult to do things live as a result. So yeah, we're going to be investing into that, and I'll keep you up to date when we actually start to go live with a podcast idea, and I'll try and get a co-host lined up as well, and all sorts of guests as well. But that's something to get excited for in the future, in the very near future at that as well. So the third major topic I wanted to talk about today was the Tokyo Game Show, which is just around the corner. In fact, TGS actually starts on Thursday, the 12th of September. So, that's tomorrow, which is all kinds of hype. And on Saturday, the 14th, being broadcast on Twitch, Nico Live, and indeed YouTube Live, I believe, will be the next live letter, the letter from a producer live with Naoki Yoshida. And essentially, it's going to be looking at all 5.1 related content, and half of the actual live letter, the second half of the live letter's broadcast, will feature Yosuke Saito and Yoko Taro of Drakengard and Nier Automata fame and Nier fame to actually talk about the new Alliance raid Dark Apocalypse, which is all kinds of hype. We need to see more stuff from that. Hopefully they don't show too much though, even though half of the live letter's broadcast is being taken up by it. But I'm sure it'll be a barrel of laughs. All I know is that Yoko Taro, in the same room as Naoki Yoshida, is going to be very difficult for them to keep on track, so this one will likely overrun quite a bit. In terms of the rest of the broadcast of the live letter, I'm really hoping they go over some of the 5.1 content. I've said this before, but what exactly are we getting? That's something that we need outlined, and what exactly is coming in 5.1.5 or something like that. So maybe Hildebrand will be pushed back, as it usually is, maybe some of the PvP stuff, because we're supposed to be getting a new frontline PvP mode, if I remember. Personally, I would love it if one day they just made a PvP roulette that featured all of the content rather than just frontline, because there are things like Rival Wings that are only really doable if you take part in the community events such as Revival Wings, which you can Google if you don't know anything about that. But essentially it's a community-driven effort to actually gather people together and queue for Rival Wings and try to actually get people the 2 mounts from Rival Wings, which are obviously quite difficult to obtain, especially now people aren't queuing for it as much as they did when it first came out. So yeah, I personally would love to get those gorilla mounts, but yeah, I'm not really going to be able to do that unless Square Enix address it. Adding more PvP modes and new maps is a great idea, but there needs to be a way of incentivizing queuing for the old stuff, or make a roulette for every PvP version. Realistically, it's needed. It's been needed for the longest time. PvP is something they want people to actually take part in. Well, that would be a great opportunity to do so, and another way of getting some more tomes for the week as well. So even people outside of PvP would actually be more inclined to try it out, apart from just the frontline roulette. So maybe a change to frontline roulette to include all the PvP, or just a brand new roulette as well, is something I would want. Whether we'll actually see that in the future, I don't know, and we certainly won't be seeing that for 5.1, I don't think. But you know, there is a new PvP mode, so hopefully they talk a little bit about that. In terms of the major content though, I would likely imagine they'll be referencing the fact there'll be a trial in 5.1. They probably won't go into too much details because a lot of people, you know, in their eyes probably haven't finished the 5.0 storyline with that end trial. So there'll be an extreme version of that, no doubt about it, in the 5.1 sort of content patch cycle. Whether that will be in the main patch or in a subsequent week's patch with Hildebrand stuff is anyone's guess at this point, but really this is the sort of stuff that needs to be laid out so we know what we're getting, because as it stands, all we have is basic information of what's coming out roughly in 5.1 and no real credible details. For example, I could talk about New Game Plus again like we did last week. We know absolutely nothing about that. There doesn't seem to be sort of like any listed incentivization towards me going and doing, you know, New Game Plus at all. I want to know the details. Is it just we can play the game again, as opposed to just creating another character, which wouldn't require any budget being put into the development of this new feature? Or does it actually have something different than a main playthrough, other than just playing with your main character as it is? I don't know. It remains to be seen, and hopefully they talk about it. There's a lot of stuff we're kept in the dark about that realistically there's no reason to be kept in the dark about. So yeah. Either way, I'm looking forward to Tokyo Game Show. I will keep you up to date on the podcast ideas, and hopefully you're enjoying the videos. Sorry about this week. I've had really bad health issues at the start of the week. I'm trying to get over those. I've got to go to the doctor to talk about constant headaches, and I've had migraines the previous week. So that's not entirely brilliant. Obviously, it's very difficult to work when you're under a lot of stress from something like a headache. And yeah, the content has suffered as a result of that, I'm not going to lie. And hopefully I don't lose too much viewership, but at the end of the day, what can I do apart from keep creating content for the stuff that I love when I can? Either way, thank you all kindly for watching, and I'll see you all next time.